Welcome everybody. We're here live under the Meds Radio. Yeah, this is your host Tech for another exclusive interview on our Skype/Zoom series. Today's date is July 30th, 2024. Time is 1:59 p.m. Eastern. If you're in another time zone, or by the time you watch this, it'll be a different time and date as well. We have a very special guest with us. This is a iconic, great director. He's directed so many movies on with the Canon film company that got bought out by MGM 93 and 94. He's done directed movies such as American Ninja, American Ninja 2. He's done work for Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, Hotel Blue, so many others. Worked with Hulk Hogan, Grace Jones, the late Steve James, Michael Dudikoff, Eric Roberts. So many things that he's done. He's been graced with awards. He's such a great guy. Bringing it right now, the man himself, the great director, Sam Firstenberg. Welcome to Under the Med Radio.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be in your show.
Thank you. It is an honor to have you, definitely. So let's start off with, how did you get into loving movies? What were some of the movies that you loved to watch as you was a kid?
When I was a kid, it was in the 60s, 1960s. I was a kid, the end of 1950s, I was a kid. And most of the movies that I saw, I grew up in Jerusalem. And there was a movie theater in my neighborhood, like a neighborhood movie theater. And we used to see movies in the afternoon, the kids, the children. So most of the movies that we saw were Hollywood adventure movies, mainly Westerns. But I also remembered a lot of the Tarzan movies, and kind of heroes. Here and there, some musical, if I'm not wrong. And at the time, there was also a lot of World War II Hollywood type of movies, but mainly, most that I saw as a kid.
Let's see. Now, what was the cinema like in Jerusalem compared to in America?
By the way, this particular cinema that I went to was a very old cinema. They used to show movie houses. They used to show movies even from the silent era, and it's as I know, it's the most ancient or veteran cinema house in the entire state of Israel, which is operating since the 1920s until today. It's like 100 years old, the cinema, the theater. So it was a small theater, not a huge theater. But also there was subtitles in Hebrew, so we can read. But as a very young child, I don't think I had the speed was too fast for me to read it. But we understood the story from the visual. Just watching the visual made sense that we understood what's happening. The good guys, the bad guys, who is chasing who is running after who is winning the battle at the end, etc.
Now, how did you adjust with your psychology with film being from Jerusalem compared to American cinema? How did you adjust to it, the differences?
We were also introduced to different type of cinema, like little bit French, a lot of Italian cinema at the time, 1960s. So some French movies, Italian movies, and if I remember correctly, here and there also will happen a movie from India. But the Hollywood movie, American movies, was our second reality. In the 1950s, we lived in relatively poverty, I would say, poor situation, difficult situation in the 50s from economical point of view. But the fantasy, the other world, the other reality for us as a children, probably my parents as well, I guess, was the Hollywood fantasy, the Hollywood dream, the movies that we consumed from Hollywood. So this was while we lived in relative poverty. So that's what it was for children, escapism. We went to see, we saw those movies as a children, and it was another world. Especially that we didn't deal with urban or realistic subject, but rather westerns and war movies and adventure movies, which did not exist in reality. We didn't see movies like, not as a kid, like On the Waterfront, that dealt with American reality. Those movies I learned later Grape of Wrath on the waterfront. Those are the type of movies that reflected the society of America, or the problem, or To Kill a Mockingbird, which shows the racial tension, but not as a kid. I was not exposed to this.
How was your time going through film school? What are some things that you learned that helped you when you had started becoming the director?
When I grew up later on, I was in my 20s, let's say, in the early 20s, finished high school, finished mandatory military service. But at that point, I decided, and I started to understand cinema much better, the different styles. But then when I was 21, I decided that I want to tell stories through the cinematic media, to tell stories on a big screen. And I knew I love Hollywood cinema. I love American cinema. I'm not particularly in love with the other type of European cinema. And I was not exposed yet to, let's say, Japanese cinema. So I decided, and I knew that I'm going to study how to make film. I didn't know anything. How do you make film? And I'm going to learn it in Hollywood. I want to go to Hollywood where they make the type of movies that I like. So I was 21 years old, maybe 22, 1972. I was 22. I packed up and I traveled, and I moved to Hollywood, and I said, okay, here I am in Los Angeles, and let me find some film school, and and started my journey into this making movies. And I found a college here in Los Angeles, the Columbia College, and I started my studies. And the interesting part, to answer your question, is when I met those people, the students, the teacher, I realized I'm in my element. We all understand each other. It was almost, I say in a metaphorical way, I arrived home. I finally got home, because all of those people, we understood each other. We spoke the same language. And of course, now the exposure of the technical the exposure to the technical part of how do you make a movie? How do you put a movie together? Because nowadays there is much more knowledge, but back then in the 1980s, 1970s, 1990s, most of people in the world, they believe that movie is made like theater. You take the camera and you start to shoot the movie from the first scene, and you go on, and you just film. This is most of the knowledge that I had. So I started to learn the technique, what is behind making. How do you put a movie together? How do you make filming, editing, music, screenwriting, scripts, so on and so on, makeup, wardrobe, and this was fantastic.
Yes,
I felt that I'm in my element.
that's awesome. And with all of the different techniques you talked about with filming and editing and the wardrobe and cutting, what's known about working with I want to make sure I say the name right, with Canon, with Yoram Monahan. Did they give you the freedom you needed when you directed your movies, like the American Ninjas, Into the Ninja, and Revenge of the Ninja? Did he give you that freedom to let you make the movie as you wanted? Were they, as the document you say, were they hitting you up saying, no, 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 do this, do that? What do you like that movie?
My history, the way things happened for me were unique way. Maybe other directors have a different way. I went to film school, undergraduate, and while I was in film school, I made few short movies. And then when I finished my graduate studies, I started to work in the movie business, not as a director, but many other jobs. I did many jobs which are in the crew. I was an electrician, lighting, grip. I worked with the sound, in many other areas. And I became assistant director. I was assistant director for 5 years in many movies. And then I decided to go back to film school, graduate school. So I went to the graduate school, and I spent 3 years in graduate school. And while I was in graduate school, I produced and directed a movie that I envisioned. It took a long time. And the movie is called One More Chance with Kirstie Alley. And when I finished it, I brought it to a film company to take it for distribution. It was people that I knew because I worked for them as an assistant director. And they took on the movie that I made while I was going to college, to Loyola Marymount University. and they took it to distribution. And then they decided to let me direct a movie, an action movie, which was called Revenge of the Ninja, which you have mentioned earlier.
Yes.
In the beginning, I believed that the company was hesitant. They're taking a young director, somebody who just made one movie, and they are entrusting in my hand, in this young director hand, much bigger movie with full of action and much more involved movie. So one of my decisions was that the first thing that we will do while we are filming the movie, we'll do an action sequence. We'll start filming an action sequence so the production company can see what I can do when it comes to action, because that's what they were interested in. So in the first week, I scheduled the way that we'll shoot one action sequence for the first week, and I send it. We was in Los Angeles. So we did it. We sent the material to the editing room, to the company, and they saw it and they felt in ease. They felt, okay, we can trust this guy, me, to direct the movie. And the truth is, to answer your question, from that point on, they did not bother me anymore, this company. The company was Canon Film. And I directed for Canon Film several movies. Revenge of the Ninja, Ninja 3, The Domination, Breaking 2, Electric Boogaloo, American Ninja #1, American Ninja #2, Avenging Force. So the truth is that they did not bother me at all. They really gave me a free hand to go ahead and direct the movie the way I envisioned it. It so happened that it was in the same vein. I saw it making movies the same way they saw making movies. So there were no conflict. So they did not bother me. They used to get involved in editing. Later on, they would come in, the head of the company, Menachem Kolan, used to come into the editing room, give advices, have requests to change. But during the filming, they never bothered me. So I was lucky. I really had a free hand in the movies that I directed.
That's great that you had that free hand. Now, with your personality, hypothetically, if you had a micromanager like some of the other directors dealt with who were working for Canon, do you think you would have been able to adjust, or would you not been able to do it? Some people don't do well with someone over their head or their neck. So your personality, do you think you still would have been able to do it if they were over your head, or think you would have not done it at all?
So you see, Evan, you are talking about big budget movies, major movies, versus the independent movies that that I made. I was involved in the world of independent, small budget movies.
Right.
The budget of those movies at the time were around $2 million in the 1980s, which was a decent budget, but could not be compared to a studio movie. So the independent companies had a limited budget for movies. They couldn't afford to give you a lot of money. But the studios, you're talking Universal, Paramount, Warner Brothers, MGM, they had major budgets for movies, yes, and much more larger schedule. So when you're talking about Michael Mann or the big directors, they work for studios and they had tons of budget, a lot of time to film, not limited. Or if you're talking about James Bond movies, for instance, produced by MGM, those are big, big movies. I never had the chance to experience it, this kind of luxury that I have. So we were tight, weeks of shooting. And within these 8 weeks, we have to wrap up, to make a movie 90 minutes, usually even longer. We used to finish, when we finished the movie, it was usually 2 hours, and then we shortened it a little bit in the editing. So within those 8 weeks, we had to pack a lot of action, big chases and fight sequences. And we worked under pressure, 8 and 12 hours a day. We're filming 12 hours a day. And of course, it's a limited, so you can see it. Of course, when you make a James Bond, they work only 8 hours a day. They don't shoot 8 weeks, but they shoot 12 weeks or 14 weeks. So they have and they have more money for more stunt people, for more bigger explosions, more helicopters, more cars to rack up, whatever they need. So that's why you see James Bond looks like James Bond, yes. or Terminator looks like that. It's a budget. I didn't have a chance to experience it. I wished I had. And I don't know if I would have behaved differently under much bigger and larger budget like you're mentioning. But still, so my experience, my history is working under the low budget independent movies, under the pressure. But maybe we had to be more innovative to solve problem. With the big studios, every problem can be solved with money. And we, in the low budget, sometimes we couldn't solve the problem with just spending more money. So we came up with some more creative solutions to solve the problems. That's how it was.
That's a great response comparison. Thank you for that. Now, with ninjas, and you've done other movies, I know you're more synonymous with the American Ninja 1 and 2, Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja. Explain the differences in your mindset of the ninjas from the American Ninja compared to Enter the Ninja and Return of the Ninja, if any.
Okay. When I grew up in cinema, it relates to a question that you asked me earlier. I've never seen one of the Hong Kong martial art movies, and those were the most popular in the 70s, in the 60s, 70s, 80s. So those were what we used to call here kung fu movies or karate movies, and they were produced in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong film industry, are expert in making martial art movies like nobody else. But I have never seen any Chinese Hong Kong martial art movie. What I was exposed to, I liked very much a lot when I was a student. So I knew the samurai genre. Now, when I was presented with an opportunity to direct a martial art movie, in this case, it was a ninja movie, but still within the world of martial art, and I met Sho Kasugi. I didn't know, as I told you, I didn't know anything about Hong Kong martial art movie. So I was introduced to Sho Kasugi, which was the star of the movie Revenge of the Ninja. And Sho Kasugi introduced me to the cinema of Hong Kong, to the Hong Kong martial art cinema, and other martial art movies. So my inspiration was always, I wanted to make movies, let's say in the style of James Bond, what we called Western type of action movies. I'm not a martial artist myself. You see, I'm not a martial artist myself. I don't know anything about fighting and competitions. I didn't know. I know much more today. So my decision was right away. I saw the Hong Kong movie. I saw the martial art movies. My decision was right away to make a movie which will be hybrid, will be a mixture between martial art movie and James Bond. Let's mix them together. So-called regular Hollywood action movie together with martial art movie. So this was my approach right away from Revenge of the Ninja. Later on, I directed a movie called Ninja 3: The Domination, which was more of a fantasy mixed with some horror elements. And then with American Ninja and American Ninja #2, I really took it more toward the mixing martial art within Western type of action movie. I don't know how to describe it, but standard Hollywood action movies, which will be more of a Stallone type of a movie, Schwarzenegger type of a movie. And I mixed them both together. So this was something that I felt comfortable, and that's what I wanted to do. Apparently, audience liked it. Audience around the world liked this mixture of the two genres together and making an exciting action movie. So this was my philosophy approaching the martial art movies.
That's a great comparison, because growing up as a kid here in Baltimore, you had something called Kung Fu Theater. It used to come on 12 noon on Saturdays, and it was always Kung Fu. But growing up as a kid and my friends, I'm 40, we always saw American Ninja 1, 2, 3. We saw all the other ones, but I didn't know until talking to you off air, I didn't see Enter the Ninja and Ninja 3 and Revenge of the Ninja till after American Ninja. So growing up, I thought they were made after American Ninja 1 or 2. So I wasn't until talking to you off air, I believe, early this week, and doing research, I was like, wait, Enter the Ninja was done before American Ninja. They showed, because this Americanized, you said the style. American Ninja was the Western, the late great Steve James with the guns and shooting and stuff. So that was more so the demographic of what we were like. And then later we saw Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, old school Kung Fu, and a little more bloody, a little more intense as opposed to the American Ninja style. So I definitely love it. Mm-hmm. And speaking of American Ninja, I got to move my head, as you see my background. As you see here, this scene that it did for you. This is from American Ninja 2. I believe one of the last scenes. Talk to us about this scene. What comes to mind?
What you see in your background is Mike Stone. Mike Stone was also a famous champion martial artist at the same level like Sho Kasugi. which I work with, or Tadashi Yamashita. But Mike Stone was the choreographer, the fight choreographer for American Ninja number 2. I think he was also the fight choreographer for the Enter the Ninja. But Revenge of the Ninja was choreographed. The fights of Revenge of the Ninja were choreographed by Sho Kasugi, and so were the Ninja 3: The Domination. So Sho Kasugi, they are equal. But you remind me. This was, by the way, American Ninja number 2 was in Manila, and the second, the one you show in the background, American Ninja number 2, was filmed in South Africa. And I have great memories because those guys that I worked with, those martial artists, as I mentioned, Sho Kasugi, Tadashi Yamashita, Mike Stone, and many others, they were masters in what they were doing. I don't know anything about martial art, and just watching them. So this is the most fun memories that I have. Just watching them was amazing. I was, when they prepared the fights, they choreographed the fight, they show me the fights, they rehearse it. And some of them themselves, they were masters, like we mentioned, Mike Stone, Tadashi. And then my job came after they showed me a fight, or they finish choreographing and show it to me. My part comes in as a director to interpret this fight, to film it, and to make sure that it will be presented on the screen in the most exciting, compelling way that possible. And so I was privileged to meet those people and to interpret their work onto the big screen.
That's amazing.
Richard Norton was also with us, Australian champion, Richard Norton. Yeah.
Now I'm not sure.
By the way, you mentioned Steve James. Steve James was a martial artist himself. Of course, not of the level of the people that I've mentioned, but he was a martial artist, accomplished martial artist from New York that came to the Hollywood. So he brought in a lot of his knowledge and his style. He had a certain style of martial art that he brought his contribution into our movies.
So you were blessed to have so many great martial arts masters in your movies. It definitely helped, and it shows, the greatness of you being a director, that you allow your actors to do what they do best that you didn't know about, and they let you do what you do. That's something that you learn. From my experience being a background actor, being on TV as well as, the great directors you see. If it's something they don't know, I'll let you do it. I'll come in later. And then when it's time for you to come in, instead of trying to have control of everything. So that's great. Now, I'm not sure if you realize this, and this will be my last question before we pause for part 2, because we have 8 minutes left. I'm not sure if you noticed, but American Ninja 1 is listed as action and adventure. American Ninja 2 is listed as action and comedy. So is that correct? That's what they say online. So tell us about that. Was that on purpose, or is that a mistake on the
internet? Okay, you're right. The first American Ninja, we concentrated on the adventure and action of it. It's kind of a Western, the hero, reluctant hero, doesn't want to get involved in the trouble. He's not looking for trouble, but somehow he's being drawn into the action, into the story, into the plot, which is very familiar theme in Western movies.
Yes.
And he's being drawn in, and then he gets, because of his values, he has to do what he has to do. And a secondary story, friendship between buddies, and together they're helping each other. And this was fine. People liked it very much. When I was asked to do American Ninja number 2, and the company sent me to South Africa because of some financial situation that they had over there. And so usually when you as a film director are presented with this problem of making a sequel, you already, where are we going from here? It's always this question, where are we going from the first movie to the sequel? So I wouldn't say it was a mistake, but we did not follow. It's true that the second movie did not follow the seriousness of the first movie. And the first movie also had a romantic theme. The first American Ninja also had a romantic theme. So by now we already established, and we really wanted Micheal Dudikoff and Steve James, the company wanted, I wanted to continue on the journey. So the relationship between them was already established. So you cannot build a new story of. So you have to rely on the relationship that Joe Armstrong and Curtis already have.
Yes.
They have the relationship. So where do we go from here? So it so happened that when I was working with the writer, it so happened and that we also went into a direction a little bit into fantasy and the cyborg ninjas with the crazy villain that is creating cyborg ninja. So it's already lighter situation. It's not serious anymore. But the minute that you're dealing with somebody who's creating cyborg ninja, you're already in another. And the setup was an island and a vacation, and the two of them are. It has like a conflict between army and marines, so it lent itself to a more comical and more light movie, as I said, because of the atmosphere, the island, and I couldn't, even I as a director, I couldn't take it too seriously once we are dealing with the cyborg ninjas. So that's how it happened. It developed.
You even had motorcycles in there, the famous beginning, which I love with the more upbeat music, the motorcycles and all that going on. And it was like totally different from part one, which I love both for different ways. And you brought back, as you said, Leo the Lion. He was in one, he came back in two. Michael Stone, Dudikoff, Steve James, the guy that played Taylor, who's South African, by the way. What's the guy that was he the colonel? He was always cussing, had the mustache, with the spiky hair. He was in charge of everything. He was like, I don't like it, but he'll do it. I like him. He was bringing back characters from one and two, which it was like in the same universe, but different.
So we brought with us to South Africa minimal amount of actors. You mentioned Michael Dudikoff, Steve James, Mike Stone, which was the choreographer, but he was also playing one of the bad guys. The bad guy, the lion, is the writer. He's the writer.
Wow.
And he's the writer of the script with the white suit. And we also brought from America the guy who plays the commander of the unit in the embassy.
Yes.
All the rest of the other actors were South African actors, including the lady, and all of them, all of them were South African actors. But because they're actors, they did the American accent. they stayed away from the South African accent, so they did American accent. And some people, because it was like in the islands, so supposedly in some kind of tropical island. So the chief of police, he adapted some kind of an accent that sounds like local, but they don't use South African. So yeah, it was a mixture. The crew was mainly South African crew, the technical crew. And to go back to the comical situation, we had, I really always, all my life, I wanted to direct like a Western brawl in the saloon, in a Western saloon, which I never had a chance. But finally, in American Ninja #2, we did it because there is a bar and Steve James and Michael Dudikoff are fighting the different people. And Steve, again, in a comical way, but I had a chance to finally direct a brawl in a saloon in a different way.
Definitely loved it, especially with the what was his name? He's South African. I don't know if he was the colonel. He's the one that was cussing out Steve James and Michael Dudikoff. He was giving orders, but he already was laughing at him. We already got the orders from the guy in the head. He just was upset. So this was small little nuances that you added where it was more lightheaded, but he kind of was laughing and had more fun, but also serious. Now I will say we have 2 minutes left before we take about a 15-minute break and start part two. Very quickly, when we start part two, we'll talk about the book and more of the other things that you've done. What would you say is your favorite out of American Ninja 1 or 2? Do you have a favorite out of the two, or do you love both the same?
Listen, obviously, the first American Ninja is the more popular movie. It is so popular around the world. There are so many fans all over the world. I'm getting a lot of email. I'm getting a lot of responses, Facebook, etc. But saying that, there are also many, many fans of the second American Ninja #2. My personal favorite is the first one because the story, I like the idea of a reluctant hero, a hero that doesn't want to get involved. it's a good drama. It's really it's good basic drama. You have a hero who doesn't want to get involved, but he has a high values life point of view about life, and at some point he has no choice. But because of his values, he's being drawn into the world of the villain, and he will have to save the situation at the end and overcome the villain. Along the way, it's nice that now he's discovering why his values are that those are his values. He discovered it as the story goes along, as the plot goes along, as he's starting to get involved in the plot. And at the same time, there is also a little romantic story, love story, light, not heavy into the story, but it's a light story. So this is the reason.
All right, fans, we're back for part two with the great Sam Firsteberg. He was talking before the break about the fans and how much he loves American Ninja Part 1. The fans also love American Ninja Part 2. So you can go to Sam and finish your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So you were saying you have fans that you personally love Part 1. You have fans that love Part 2 as well. They come up to you and let you know.
Yeah, I love more of this movie, American Ninja #1, because of the element, the dramatic element I've mentioned to you in the first part that we spoke, and it's just this is the reason. But saying all of this, I even like more the movie Avenging Force, which is not a ninja movie, but still,
We'll get
Micheal
to that.
Dudikoff and Steve James, which are, in my
Yes.
opinion, from a. So, yes, okay.
Now, I will mention this the ask this question to you. It's something I've learned with working as a background actor for a few years. Shout out to my good old buddy Theo Washington, who's amazing casting director. It's something in the business called being burned, which means when you're a background actor, if someone sees your face, you can't reuse you for a part at all. Unless you're in the background and you see the back of your head. It's Mike Stone, the great Mike Stone, played the bad guy, part 1, part 2. Now, are you aware that in American Ninja Part 3, he's uncredited as the actual referee for one of the fights in the beginning?
No, listen, they are making a movie, especially complex scenes like action, chase, etc., are very involved, very, very complicated, especially when we work under duress, under pressure that we have to finish fast. The director, which sits over there and oversees everything, is bombardment with a lot of information and question from the crew. Should we do this? Should we go this way? Should we have this wardrobe? Should the background be like this, etc.? The director has some assistants that will help him. When you've put together a huge fight sequence like you're mentioning with many, many background ninja, martial artists, etc., here and there, because of the pressure we are under, things might slip and we miss something here
Yes.
and something there because we are under tremendous pressure to do it, to finish. So little mistake, continuity mistake, people appearing twice. I know it happens because we only have so many action assistants or action doubles. We just have a certain group, let's say 8 people. Most of the extras are not part of our group. So if you take Mike Stone, he had a group of people helping him to put it together. And we also had a stunt coordinator, BJ Davis, and he is involved in putting the action together. And he has a group of stunt people which are with him. They are helping me. They are helping me to put the fight together. So, and they have to use their own people many times, because whenever we preferred a specific stunt, we cannot take one of the extras to do something dangerous or to do something that calls for expertise. So we're using the same people again and again.
Exactly.
Thankfully, ninjas are with masks, so we can get by with using the same people different, or sometimes we give the mustache, we take away the mustache. There are many tricks, but we are limited, and we do have. So if you see the same person in two different doing two different things, it might happen. Hopefully, I'm always hopeful that the action is so exciting. What is happening in the screen is so compelling that the audience will not have enough time to realize if we make one of those mistakes. Because there is enough excitement, and we add music, we add sound effects and punches and so on. But of course, once if you see the movie many times and you see it on a cassette, on a video disc, and you have a chance to stop and rewind, then then you can detect all those little mistakes. But usually not on a theater, on a big screen when it's running, when you're with an audience, as a spectator, as an audience, you're with many people, and everything is loud sound and music. As I said, music and sound. You will not notice hopefully, you will not notice these little mistakes that we're making.
And it's not a problem. This was funny because I remember later in years I watched part. I have all 5 American Ninjas, and I watched part 3 while I was in college. I was like, wait a minute, he died in part 2. He's a ref now in part 3, and I was like, maybe it is a different thing because you can see his face. Not that it was a problem, but it was pretty funny. And like you said, it's independent, so you deal with who you can deal with. And most people now, they probably know now, but most people back then didn't even realize it, even pay attention to it at all. So this was something funny.
No.
Let's talk about working with the great Steve James and Michael Dudikoff and Grace Jones and Hulk Hogan, some of the great ones you worked with. Tell us about some of your experiences of working with them.
So as I mentioned, the first martial artist master that I met was Sho Kasugi. He came from Japan to the United States, and he wanted to make it in the film industry. He was already champion with many titles from Japan when he came, and he was looking for his chance. Finally, he got, and he was the villain. Finally, he was friendly with Mike Stone. That's how it happened, to the best of my knowledge. And Mike Stone was the choreographer of the movie Enter the Ninja. And Mike Stone suggested that Sho Kasugi will be the villain. So in the movie Enter the Ninja, Sho Kasugi is the villain. He's the bad guy fighter. So he was there, and the movie was directed by the head of the company, Menachem Golan. And Menachem Golan, the head of the company, Canon Film, was very impressed by the abilities of Sho Kasugi, obviously, because he's great. He is great. So the movie did pretty well in sales. So it was a moderate success, let's call it this way. And in Hollywood, when they have something, they want to make a sequel immediately when they have a success. So they wanted to make another movie in the ninja genre, Revenge of the Ninja. And because he knew Sho Kasugi, here somebody's taking it. And this somebody's my wife. Okay, back. Because he knew Sho Kasugi, he wanted him to be the hero, the protagonist in the next movie. And this is the way I met Sho Kasugi, and I had this pleasure to learn from him, to see, because he really introduced me to the world of the ninja. He suggested, recommended the books that I should read. He recommended the movie that I have to see, and of course, he was the choreographer of the fights. So him and the people he brought in, he brought in the students. And so it was nice for me to work with him, and I worked with him again in the movie Ninja 3: The Domination. His on the screen was smaller than in the first movie, but still he was around, and he also introduced me to Elena Micheal, another great martial artist that was part of the movie. And this was basically, those 2 movies was the end of our working relationship. I stayed in contact with Sho Kasugi because Sho was going back and forth to Japan and back, and then he started this television show, I think The Master, and other movies. The connection between us disappeared. And then I got involved with Michael Dudikoff and Steve James and Tadashi Yamashita, as I mentioned, and Mike Stone. And we made together 2 movies, but with Mike and Steve, I made another movie, Avenging Force. So I was with them 3 movies. So we were in good contact, in good relationship, friendship. I'm still in contact with Michael Dudikoff. Luckily enough, with Steve James, I had the chance to make a 4th movie, to direct him again in the movie Riverbend. Yes. So we were really good friends. Unfortunately, we all know that he passed away too early, too young, really too young. And I think he was in his way to stardom, to become maybe the next Black American hero.
Yes, that is true. He was so great.
That's I saw. This was his trajectory. But and I must admit that toward the end of his life, when he was probably sick, I didn't see him anymore. I learned later from people that when he was sick, he died of cancer. So probably toward the end or the next 5 years, he didn't look good because
Yeah, he was all big and
Steve James was like an Hercules.
he was.
He had such a beautiful appearance. His body was amazing. But maybe when he was sick, he didn't look so good anymore. And he didn't want to meet with his old friends or something. I don't know. But so the relationship kind of dissipated toward the end. I was invited to the memorial service, of course. I went to after he died. But and I'm still in touch. Doesn't live in the US anymore. He moved to the Philippines. So once in a while, we're in contact, email, etc. He's writing a book now, so I helped him a little bit.
Wow.
And this is it. So we still keep in contact here and there with some of the people. But I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I had the chance to work with this kind of people. And also in the world of stunt coordinating, you're not mentioning, but those people are also action people. And I know your show deals with action.
Yes.
And so I worked a lot with Steve Lambert. He was the stunt coordinator in many of the movies that I directed. He was a very brave, very innovative stunt coordinator that came up with great action. And then I directed a few movies. I worked with B.J. Davis, also a great stunt coordinator, very brave and very innovative and imaginative that they put together. So those were the action people around me. I'm considered an action director, but every action director needs all these groups
Yes.
that I've just mentioned to help him to make action, because there are very few directors who are also actually fighters or stunt coordinator. Not everybody is Jackie Chan,
Now I will say, if you saw a shadow like you saw a quick shadow in the background of your wife. So, guys, if you saw a shadow in the background, that's not recommended to you. That's my wife
That's correct.
getting something to eat. So both of our wives are coming through at the same time. So, but it's great. How was it like working with Grace Jones and Hulk Hogan? Of course, everyone knows who they are.
I'm sorry, repeat again. How was it working with
Grace Jones and Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan? Okay. At some point in my career, later on in my career, I was approached at one point by a production company, another production company, not Canon Film, and it was even smaller. It was almost independent, and they told me they have a movie, adventure movie, comedy adventure movie for children, for kids, mixture for kids, and they already have a deal with Hulk Hogan, and would I direct it? So I accepted. And here's the deal. I'll go back 1 second. When I was a film student, it worked for a television station. I was a cameraman for a television station in Los Angeles. And this station is called Channel 13. They used to show the wrestling show once a week, but this was the early wrestling, before the wrestling became very popular. And we used to go and film or videotape those wrestling show either on an arena or in the station. And one of the young fighters was Hulk Hogan. I remember him.
Oh,
He was one of the group.
wow, that's great.
A young wrestler, Hulk Hogan. This was in the 70s. So anyway, then of course, the explosion of the wrestling world, and it became very popular, 80s, 90s, etc. And okay, here I have a chance to go and work with Hulk Hogan. Now, he lives in Florida. He lives actually on an island off the of the mainland. He has his own private island. And he insisted, when he made the deal with the production company, that the filming will be in his hometown, which is St. Pete, Florida, or Clearwater, St. Pete, this area, central Florida. And he wanted, if they will do the filming over there, he agreed. So anyway, they agreed. So we all moved to Florida, and then I met him. And I started to work with him. Now, he's a gentle guy, he's a gentleman, but immensely popular. I didn't realize I'm not so much into the world of wrestling. So I didn't realize, I knew that Hulk Hogan is a big star in the world of wrestling, but how popular he was. So we are filming in in several areas, and every day lunchtime, there is a line of children coming to get his autographs, because he was so popular, especially with kids, I believe. So always, wherever we went with him, and he all the time he had the patience to talk with the children and to sign or whatever. People come with the Hogan dolls and posters, and he took his time to deal with the crowd. Of course, I believe they know him in Florida, in this area of Central Florida, but yet, and was very kind and gentleman. He had, of course, he always had his assistants, his group with him, just like Shokasugi, like martial arts. So, where the world of wrestling is similar. The master has some of his
students,
students with him all
apprentices.
the time, surrounding him, and he told me a lot because he knew. Because I told him that I was working with the filming, so he told me all kind of stories from the world of wrestling. He had his knees were hurting him a lot. It was toward the end of his career, not in the beginning.
Yes.
So he wasn't that active anymore in fighting himself, but he's an organizer. You know, he represents many wrestlers. He told me the story. He represents many of the wrestlers in the association, and they work under his umbrella, under his what you call him, blessing or whatever. And he himself already had some problem, knees problem at that time. So he told me it's harder and harder for him to do the wrestling because they land on the knees a lot. And but he had a lot of other young wrestlers under his umbrella, under his leadership, and it was very nice. I had just fun memories with him, joking and having a good time. I have many pictures with him. I took many pictures with him. It was fun all the way, all the way.
What was the most fun that you've had filming a picture? What was the most difficult?
You know that along all the strings of those action movies, I had it's called Breakin 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yes.
Starring Shabadoo and Michael Shrimp, Michael Chambers. And this movie, Breakin 2, was fun from day one to the last day, from the first hour of every day, from coming to the set in the morning until the evening at the end at 12 o'clock. The reason is that number one, we dealt with music, not with blood and not action and not explosions. So we did not deal with violence, but rather we dealt with music and dancing, everything on the positive side. We didn't have to deal with violence. And on the set, there was music from the morning to the evening, all the time, rehearsal. So we had those huge loudspeakers that played music on the set all the time. The filming was done in the neighborhoods in Los Angeles, Boyle Heights. It's called East Los Angeles, where the Western type of breakdancing was born, which is different, if I understand correctly, different from the Eastern style of breakdance. So this was the mecca of this neighborhood where we were shooting was the actual part, the actual area, East Los Angeles, where the hip hop culture of Los Angeles came to life. So it was a lot of fun. So and again, I had the chance to learn a lot. Just like in the martial art, here I'm exposed to another thing, to hip hop. And Ice-T was on the set. He was in the movie, and he was in the beginning of his career as a rapper. I was introduced to hip hop culture. I was introduced to rap. I was introduced to breakdancing, and every day on the set, like 8 ahead, just like martial artists and wrestling, Shabadoo has his followers coming every day with him. There was a group of Shabadoo dancers. And of course, in the neighborhood, by then they were famous because the movie Breakin was already out. Yes. And Breakin was a big success. Yes. So every day we were shooting in the street, filming in the street. Breakdance were flocking, coming to see our filming. It was a lot of fun and less of a pressure. Action has a lot of pressure. It's dangerous. You, as a director, I always have to worry that something will not happen. Nobody will be injured. Because it is dangerous to film action with explosions and swords and flying in the airs and air and falling and cars and the motorcycles. Yeah. And here the element of danger was not there anymore. Of me to be under pressure, tense about the safety of the actors. So it was a lot of fun.
Makes a lot of sense, and it would make sense that filming an action movie would be a lot more stressful compared to music. And you're very influential in the Black culture and hip hop because you directed Breakin, which definitely is influential and legendary in hip hop culture. Every hip hop rap artist that's known past and present always go back to that. one of our close friends, Kenny, a great artist. That's one of his favorite movies is Breakin. So I told him that I was able to talk to the director of one of his favorite movies. So he can't break dance at all. Don't even ask him, but he loves the movie definitely. So now let's talk about you, Sam. You got awarded an honorary award, the Oscar Award, Life Achievement Award that you got awarded a few years ago. Talk about that, receiving that award and the book that you are a part of, which is called Living in the Trenches, Times Written for Canon Films.
Well, in the last few, Evan, the type of movies I was making, which were actually video store type of a movie, those movies they called them direct to video movies. So, in theater, but the main market was in the video stores. They came up with the VHS cassettes, later on with the DVD discs, and the people would rent them. And that's how those small companies, production companies, made money through the rent. But this came to an end. And because it was a very prosperous market, we had enough money to make movies. We had decent budget to make movies, decent amount of money to make movies. So we were not too skimpy, So we were able to produce enough action, enough excitement with this money. But this market kind of came to an end for two reasons. Number one, the studios, the main major studios that in the beginning were not involved in the video market, suddenly they realized, well, there is a lot of money over there. Look at this. So they say, we are going to enter this field of the video cassette or this type of action movies. And they started to produce, so, Universal took Van Damme from the independent and started to make big budget Van Damme movies. So happened with the Schwarzenegger, so happened with Stallone. So they started to make Predator, they started to make The Last Action Hero. So it's the same type of movies that we made, but with much bigger action. True Lies, for instance, if you take True Lies, it's the same type of movies we made, but bigger. If you take Predator, the same thing. And then, so those companies were ran out of business. And directors like me, I'm not the only one. You take Toby Hooper, Sheldon Lettich, that worked with Van Damme, Steve Carver, Joe Zito. Suddenly, the carpet was pulled from under our legs. This group of directors who made the action movies with the medium budget. And they started to make the big budget. So those companies did not make the budget. And in any case, this entire market disappeared eventually. This entire video rental market disappeared also for the big studios, and everything became streaming, as you know, either theater or streaming. So then so it was over at the end of the 1990s, it was over. I was still directing movies, but those main ninja movies, etc., disappeared. And they kind of started like in a natural way, every movie with the years, it's going and disappearing, except the classics, like Rocky, for instance, right? Rocky will never disappear. It's a classic movie. But most of the movies are disappearing. People forget the movie. There is Young Generation, etc. So for 10 years, nobody mentioned. I didn't hear anything about those movies. And suddenly came the 2000s, and suddenly I'm starting to get telephone calls. People want to interview me. They are telling me that there is a revival of those old movies, of the ninja movies. They are coming back to life. There is the audiences. There is new audience. There are loyal fans, etc., and they watching more and more. American Ninja is playing in all the streaming services, and now we have retro screenings and in festivals, and I was not working anymore as a director, so I started to dedicate more and more time to preservation of the legacy of the movies I directed and those movies in general. And I'm invited to a lot of film festivals, especially before the pandemic, before the corona, to film festivals. People would give me, and it comes to your question, it would give me all kind of award, the Life Achievement Award. And I was surprised. I didn't believe that there is a renewed interest in those movies, which are now they're 40 years old. And I was approached by a writer, reporter, who wanted to write a book about those movies. So here I'm lifting this book, Stories from the Trenches, the movies of Sam Firsteberg. And he came up with this huge book with photos and pictures about American Ninja. And there are other books, more and more interesting that I read, books about all the movies of Canon film. There is a book about Sheldon Lettich, the director Sheldon Lettich, who directed Lionheart and Double Impact, and so on. There is more and more interest in those movies. It might be because when we made our movies, action movies, we did not use any optical effect. There was no computer generated images or computer generated effect. So everything that you see in those action movies was performed for real.
Yes. Practical.
Sho Kosugi, Micheal Dudikoff, Steve James, Van Damme, they had to do it. They really had to perform it. And it's not Matt Damon, not at all.
Right.
So those people, and the people can feel it. I think that the viewer can feel it, that it's really done physically in front of them on the screen, what they see in the screen. So if they see a motorcycle go over a wall and land on the other side of the wall, this was actually performed. No special effect. It's not the Fast of the Furious that the car flies between two buildings, and it's fake. The car cannot fly between two buildings. It's spectacular. It's beautiful, but you can feel that this is fake. This is generated by computer versus we had a motorcycle going in over a wall, landing on the other side. This was done for real. No gimmicks, no optical gimmicks, So this is my feeling about all this award. It's nothing. It's good for the ego. It's nice. It's fine. But I'm happy that it helps to preserve the legacy of this low-budget, independent genre movies, action, sci-fi, horror, and it's still here today. To my surprise, we just had a good screening in here, 40 years anniversary of Breakin to Electric Boogaloo in the theater that belongs to Tarantino, and here in Los Angeles, the Beverly Cinema. Many people. It was a midnight screening. The theater was full. I brought in the stars, and Shabadu also, sadly enough, passed away during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
But I brought in Michael Shrimps and Lucinda, and there were so many fans standing in line 45 minutes. There was a line for them to sign all kind of posters, and so those I'm surprised. To my surprise, to my amazement, some of the movies, not all of the movies I directed, but some of them are still around. They're still flourishing, more or less, within this huge world of a lot of action movies, superheroes. There's so much happening, but still people like the old movies, and I am helping to preserve the legacy. So that's what I'm doing.
That's amazing. And rest in peace to Shabadu. I didn't know he passed away during the pandemic, but definitely a legend in the world of film and in the industry. So rest in peace to him. Condolences to his family. Last question, since we have under 10 minutes. Let us know, one, your favorite Canon movie that's not a movie that you made. And two, will we see another movie made by you, or are you fully retired?
Listen, the Canon company was a phenomenon in Hollywood. Despite the fact that they were not studio, they produced many movies, around 400 movies. There is somebody who's writing books about all the Canon movies. He finished volume 2, and he's now busy with volume number 3. Many movies. But in my opinion, the best movie that Canon produced, I did not direct, was Runaway Train with John Voight, with Eric Roberts. In my opinion, is the best, the most quality movie that this company produced. I know they did a lot of Bronson movie, they did a lot of Chuck Norris movies. I mean, Missing in Action, Death Wish. They did a lot. But my feeling, and they tried also some artistic movies, but I think that Runaway Train was the best of Canon movies. And among the movies that I directed for Avenging Force with Steve James and Micheal Dudikoff, the action is superb. It's great action. It's political. It's racial tension. It's social elements. There are social elements, white supremacy. So the movie is dealing with some element which, by the way, nowadays are more relevant than when we filmed the movie 40 years ago. But still has an exciting action. Yeah, but still within all those elements of, as I'm mentioning, there was still good, exciting action that carries on through the movie, non-stop action, bigger, spectacular action. And I like it a lot. Well, I think it's the best of the movies that I directed when it comes to action.
Well, I would say, hopefully, Sam, Thank you so much for your time, guys. It's Under the Mat Radio, another great online video exclusive interview on Skype and on Zoom, the series that we do with the great Sam Firsteberg. Please check him out. He has a website. He's on social media to the best of that he is. Please check out the book, Living Through the Trenches, that is available currently on Amazon. You guys have a soft cover. Do you have a hard cover as well? Which is just soft cover.
No, I think it's only this. This is a soft
The
cover.
paperback, the soft cover.
I was not involved. I'm not involved in the selling or producing it. There is a writer, Marco Sidelman.
Yeah. So please check that book out on Amazon.
But I worked with him. I associated. I helped him a lot. I gave him connection. Excuse me?
Yeah, you're all through the book. So said that book couldn't have been done without you and the great movies that you actually directed and the great people that you worked with.
Listen, thank you very much for having me in your show. It was a pleasure talking with you. You have a very good question. I hope the listeners will enjoy it. And I can add, if you need any photos, you can write to me. If you need any photos, I can send you a link. I don't know if it will help you or not, but
Sure.
I'll send you a link of photos from American Ninja, etc. So we can communicate through email about this subject.
Yes.
But other than that, thank you very much. It's terrific to be a guest on your show and tell all those stories to the fans.
Thank you so much, Sam Firstenberg, for your time.
Yes.
And hopefully in the next week or two, we can have you back for part 3 to talk more on Avenging Force and some more of the other work that you've done with the other movies that you have done as well, that people may not have known. So thank you very much.
Sure.